Hey guys, make sure you are subscribed to our channel and turn on notifications so you know all of our latest posts, and follow us on Twitter and TikTok to come chat some wrestling with us and see clips from our latest videos and podcasts. But now, let's get into the video.
What's going on, guys? C2 Wrestling here, back at it again with another new video. Today we got a few things we want to discuss. By a few things, I mean three each. We're going to talk about a company we haven't quite touched on too much yet in our channel, and that's going to be AEW, All Elite Wrestling. And now listen, before we even get started, there's a lot of discourse online about this company, that company, who works for who likes who, whatnot. What we want to discuss is constructive criticism. We are not here to crap on AEW, crap on WWE. It's all constructive. We're going to discuss three things that could help AEW. Three things we have each come up with on our own. We're going to discuss, collaborate ideas on how we can help the company. I think there's a lot to get into here. We went to an AEW show. We were at one of the first shows they had, and I'm not going to hold back in saying a little lackluster. Now, there's some things that company can do to help. There's things every company can do to help them, but we're going to get right into it. I want to pass it off to you. Let's hear it. What's something that AEW could do to help them out? What could they change?
I will mention I was at the first All In
That's
as
true.
well.
That is true. Yep.
So I've watched, like, this is not like we've never watched it and we're just going off. And this is strictly our opinion, what we think would get us more tuned in. First thing that comes to mind, and I know we discussed orders. This is not like the first thing I'm saying. This is the number one thing that they have to do. There's no specific order on these. The first thing that comes to mind for me is getting rid of the trios division. And I know there's probably some people who like trios. Sure, there's great matches. The best of 7 series between the Elite and I can't even remember who they faced. Pac,
Yeah.
Penta,
Yep.
and Ray Phoenix. Death Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Great series. Awesome.
Yep.
To me, I've never been a big 6-man tag guy
Me neither.
to begin with.
Yeah.
I love tag team wrestling.
Absolutely.
There was a point where AEW had the best tag team roster in all of wrestling.
By far.
I don't care what your personal opinion is on the product, whatever. There was a point where it was the best in the world.
It was.
And I think you can pinpoint one of the worst twists to it being when the trios division became. You took a lot of your top tag teams and immediately put them into trios. There is one other big moment that I'm going to mention after, but I'm wondering trios division, it has to go, right?
It has to go. I'm surprised I didn't even put this one down. I did discuss this and thought about it a little bit in my own brain, but this was almost like an obvious choice for me, so I wanted to touch on some things outside of it. It watered down their division, not only their tag division, but the singles division, in my opinion. I think a great stable to mention in the trios division is the House of Black. And again, Aleister Black, Malachi Black, whatever you want to call him, is one of my favorites of all time. Doesn't matter what company he's in, where he's wrestling, but man, when he was in WWE, there was a lot of discourse about how he was being mistreated, not used properly. We're not quite hearing that discourse on him over in AEW, but the trios division is not helping him. I get it. They might have had a tag title run, a trio title run, but you miss out on potential factions when you have a now trio tag stable. House of Black as a faction, you can have Brody King and Buddy Matthews run around as tag champions. It'd be a great tag team. And you have Aleister Black, the head honcho. Maybe he gets a mid-card title run, a main title run, and you have a House of Black faction instead of a tag team. It would also only, as you said, we both kind of discussed, it waters down their tag division. You now just have more teams. Trios wrestling 6-man tag matches are filler matches to me. There's not really much more to it outside of it being filler. I think you also, in trios, there's teams that have worked out. I get it. There's 3-man stables that have worked out in the past. A lot of 3-man stables are thrown together. Death Triangle, great stable. it's the Lucha Bros and Pac. They made it work, but there's not a third Lucha Bro. It doesn't really flow as well. It's almost a universe mode type table.
Yeah.
A random R-Truth pairing with
Yeah.
Big Show and somebody else. I think trios tag titles in any company should never exist.
I'm a big believer in the Freebird rule is the
Yes.
best
Yes.
thing for factions.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with a faction winning tag titles and them kind of rotating. I remember being a kid and the Spirit Squad won the tag titles, and it was any two of the five, and
Yep.
loving that. Like, I thought it was the coolest thing. I was young, so I didn't fully understand the Freebird rule at the time. So I was like, wow, this is so cool. Any of the guys, like, it's just so easy storyline wise before a match starts. Which two are you going to get? We'd get the same thing with the New Day all the time. Which two of the New Day are they going to face?
Yes.
One last point on the trios division and how it's really hurt the tag team division is you had a tournament for your tag titles after the champions won and vacated it. And then the winners of the tournament were the team that the champions defeated. So your tag division, already being hurt by the trios division, also feels even more lackluster because the champions couldn't beat the former champions who gave it up. So I think that all ties back together to the trios division hurting these tag teams. So for me, that was the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, that is again an easy one. And I will just very briefly say this isn't necessarily one of my changes, but there's a lot of titles in this company. Getting rid of one title, one set of titles is not a detriment. There's a lot going on. They have a lot more things they can get to and do. Dropping a set of titles would only help them.
For sure. So what's your first thing that you want to touch on?
So first thing, I don't really have an order into which I would change things in AEW, but I want to start just by saying I think AEW needs to educate the audience a little bit more. Now, there was a little bit of discourse a few months ago, however long, about Googling wrestlers. You got to look them up, find out who they are. And listen, I get it. If I see a new guy debut, if I see a hologram debut, wow, that was a great match. Maybe I will YouTube up an older hologram match, learn a bit more about the guy. I shouldn't have to do that to learn why he's in that match. There's a lot of crossover in AEW. They have a whole pay-per-view dedicated to it, which doesn't really need to be a pay-per-view anymore. They all do this independent wrestling on the side, but you got AEW, New Japan, CMLL. They did stuff with TNA in the past, and there's a lot of crossover stuff there. But a lot of these names, whether people want to agree or not, are not household names in wrestling. The TNA guys aren't necessarily, and it's nothing against New Japan. Most of these New Japan wrestlers are not really names to the casual wrestling audience. To defend AEW, I will say most of their fans are more so hardcore wrestling fans. WWE has a much broader casual audience. It would be even more so educate the audience and change these things if this was going on in WWE, in all honesty. But I still think there's a lot of room there for improvement, a lot of thrown together random matchups that if they were established and built up, could go a lot further, be a lot better.
It makes me think the amount of tournaments are also a lot. That's not one of my things, but the reasoning of people facing just being from tournaments does not really do it for me. I will say, I think there is a happy medium that is, I'm by no means going to say that it's easy to achieve, but there's a happy medium between educating a fair weather fan or someone who's just flipping through the channels, or the classic joke of the Big Bang Theory fans that still stick around and haven't turned the TV or changed the channel. There's a happy medium between educating them and not insulting your diehard audience. I will admit, I do think AEW's fans are a little harder on their own product than WWE
Absolutely.
fans are on their own product. And that's not a bash. I think that's, they don't want their intelligence insulted, which for years with WWE, I mean, it's all they would do is, insult your intelligence to make you think you were like a complete moron. So it's very tough to get this happy medium, but I think there is something there to where AEW can please their hardcore fans, but also can explain to a common fan why this matchup is so important, why this feud is so big, why this is happening right here, right now, and why it makes sense. Because making sense is the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of touched on that. It was a little bit of what I wanted to get into as well, was treating the fans that do watch the show every week, know all the wrestlers, all the crossovers. How do you also respect them while also educating new fans, getting new people involved? There's a way to do it right, and WWE, it's not necessarily comparing right now, but they've been on fire. It was Nick Nemeth had recently come out and said he watched a recent episode of Raw, first time watching in a while. And he had gone on to say how it flowed. The show flowed. It was very story based, and they did a great job on informing a not casual viewer on what's going on, catching them up, but also doing so without disrespecting the audience that does watch every week, without a filler 10-minute segment. They already know what's going on. AEW could do a bit more of that. I understand Twitter is a tool in this wrestling world. WWE uses it. All these companies do. Announcing a hologram debut on Twitter is just maybe not enough. It's really not enough. Again, that fan base is a bit more hardcore, but those casual fans aren't necessarily on Twitter looking for updates and highlights and all this stuff. I think if they took their time, educate the audience a little bit more on what they're doing, it helps them build stories a little bit more, they would have a more in tune audience.
Agreed. And your first point is being educate the audience. That is a great segue to my second point. Because when it comes to educating, it comes to learning. And if you're picking up what I'm putting down, the learning tree. There was a point where Chris Jericho, I wasn't missing a single second of what he was doing.
Yeah.
I need less Chris Jericho. I need less Chris Jericho because for me, as a casual watcher of AEW at this point, Chris Jericho is changed the channel heat.
Yes.
I put aside his personal views, political views, whatever. Strictly talking what is on television. This has changed the channel stuff for me.
It absolutely is. Jericho, at many points in my life, was my all-time favorite wrestler. Early Jericho, his debut in WWE, it's one of the greatest debuts of all time. Had a great run. His return runs, fantastic. List of Jericho. We went to Mania 33. Jericho was over the moon at that point. His time is up. Let's be realistic. I feel like if this were 7 years ago, 10 years ago, Mania 33, 7 years ago, Jericho would be telling the guy in his current position to stop. It's gone too far. It's too much. Your career is over. Jericho is not much older right now than Goldberg was 7 years ago coming back around, It is taking time away from other talent that I would like to see a bit more get on screen. And even the talent that it is involved, like Brian Keith is a fresh name. What's it doing for him? Not much, in my opinion. It's changed the channel heat. There is a difference. And again, I really don't want to compare and contrast with WWE. It's just the first name that comes to my mind. Dom Mysterio. That heel heat is through the roof right now. And there's a difference in great heel heat and change the channel heat. There's a big difference in that.
And that's where he's at for me. And you mentioned Brian Keith. That is a very interesting name of someone I saw a lot about. And I was interested in him.
Yeah.
He looked awesome. I see clips of him in Deadlock.
Yeah, I like his gimmick.
I'm like, this guy is sick.
Yep.
And he debuts and is immediately in the learning tree. And I'm like, wow, this is a guy that I had so much interest in. And I've immediately lost it just because this is how they're starting. Now, I'm not saying he's DOA and there's no hope for him because he is incredibly talented. But right now, I have not cared once about anything he has done because he immediately went into that.
And listen, if you wanna hit the comments below, you yell at me. It's okay. All right. Jericho again, and I mean this, favorite wrestler many points in time. From his start in AEW, immediately downhill. Inner Circle, very thrown together stable, and not a lot of sense made out of who they pair together. Swagger or Jake Hager, whatever you want to call him. How many stables has he had in AEW since the Inner Circle? Now going into this learning tree, it's run its course. Jericho, if any involvement with AEW, it should be behind the scenes at this point. Maybe he can be a manager for somebody. I do not need an in-ring Chris Jericho. I don't need a crazy over-the-top gimmick from him anymore. More low-key, help put over some talent, call it a career, enter the WWE Hall of Fame, end it there.
The Jericho Appreciation Society was like
I forgot about that.
That was the real beginning. But
yeah.
Before you get into number 2, I immediately think of someone who got away from that story that I was like, oh wow, I actually kind of like this guy, was Daniel Garcia.
Yeah.
I really wasn't in on Daniel Garcia, and I didn't get it. As soon as he left and started doing his own thing, it's like I like this guy. I rock with this guy. Yeah. I can get invested in Daniel Garcia stories, and it took him being away from Jericho in those stories for me to kind of latch on.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I see what you're saying with Daniel Garcia. He still does fall into a bubble for me of like, I don't really get it. Something about him is not bad. I don't dislike him at all by any means, but he just hasn't quite gotten over for me yet. There's nothing in me that's like, got to see Daniel Garcia. But I will transition that to my number 2. Again, things we want to change about AEW. Number 2, for me, this is a big one. Again, a lot of discourse online. We're sitting in them. Seats, venue. AEW, let's be realistic. You can sell out Wembley once a year. I get it. It's a lot of tickets. It means nothing if you are not selling out your weekly shows. WWE, notorious for having a very bad few-year run at points, not selling tickets, not selling out arenas. WWE is a bigger conglomerate. They never had to go to a smaller venue. If AEW would just do exactly what they're doing in 3,000 seat venues for a little while, establish that fan base back, fill the arena, it would go over so much better with the crowd. In fact, the TNA route, the NXT route, Full Sail University, Universal Studios, find a permanent venue. Stop traveling for a little bit. I get it. That's a big thing in the wrestling world. AEW, again, I'm not here to get hate. They are not there yet for me. They really are not. It's a newer company by a family with a lot of money. Okay. So they're able to do these things quicker than a startup company would, but it doesn't mean you should because you can. There's time to build up and establish. Monday Night Raw started in the Hammerstein Ballroom. That's a small venue, and they built their way up. It is alarming when you go from selling out 20,000 seat arenas to in 3-4 years under 1,000 tickets for some of these shows. It's pretty alarming.
I think it was Arthur Ashe that they've been to, and it's like in 3 years, like the first event was crazy ticket sales.
I think that's what I saw.
And in the last 2, it is like significantly dropped. I'm just looking at it from an actual viewer standpoint, because look, when you're watching a show, if there's empty seats, they're not going to show the empty seats. People online are going to post it, whatever. People online are going to find something negative and post it anyway. For me, like one of the main things I think of, not too long ago, I can't think of the specific spot. They did a show in like a 3,000 to 4,000 seat arena, and they filled it, and the lighting was perfect. Going to a smaller venue and lighting it up because there's people there, you've packed them in. And like for me, I think of, there's an old saying in hockey: every game sells out, they've all got season tickets. I mean, that's fine for right now with wrestling. Because this is a television based product. You don't do live events, so you're not growing going into random cities, doing multiple live events.
Mhm.
Going to little bit smaller venues, you can go to your smaller stage, you can switch it up. I think it would look worlds better. I
World's
completely
better.
agree with you.
World's better. I recently went to a local GCW show, Game Changer Wrestling show. It was at a small local venue near me. Probably seats at most 1,000, and it was way under that for the ring setup and everything. And it was packed in there. It was tight. The show was fantastic. It would be the same if it was AEW. I think they need to go that route. I am going to transition that. I'm going to skip over you and go back to back here. Go right into my third thing I want AEW to change because it kind of falls in line with the venue. These you can almost tie together a little bit. My third thing, it's a basic statement. It's going to mean a lot. Less is more. AEW is doing a lot all the time. Big venues, 15 match cards, 3 shows a week, not even including Ring of Honor shows, 100 titles, blood on 2-minute matches in Collision. There's a lot. Production is not great. WWE was also not great for a very long time. Again, we all know and acknowledge this. Kevin Dunn, see ya. It has not been great. It was Preston Vance recently, I believe, in a 2 to 3 minute Collision match on camera, blatant as day, on the ground, blading. I'm fine with blood. I'm fine with the blading. I do think it is very much less is more to begin with. It does not need to happen every show, every week, every month. You save the blood. It never needs to happen on Collision, to be honest with you, especially in a 3-minute match. And if you're going to do it, don't put it on TV. Don't catch the guy blading. I don't work production. I don't handle the camera. Maybe it's easier said than done. The whole company, though, less is more. I will let you speak in a second. I feel like I'm rambling here a little bit, but a big thing I did briefly mention, 15 match cards, these pay-per-views. WWE's done it again, too. Less is more. SummerSlam, again, I hate to compare, was a perfect show. I wouldn't even fault AEW if they started doing 2-night events. Anything to break up the 7, 8 hour shows, the transitioning from matches with AEW. There's been, maybe it was a little worse on their earlier days, but man, a match would end and the guys are walking to the back and the new entrants are coming out for the next match already. There's got to be a little bit of buffer there. Let the fans cool down at home and at the arena. It's a lot if you've ever been to a wrestling show. It's exhausting. Being there all day, cheering, screaming, yelling, you need some cool down moments. Less is more.
Dominic Mysterio was on Impulsive recently.
Yes, great episode.
Great episode, great interview. And he mentioned Raw going to Netflix. Mm-hmm. Doing all of these things, it loses its allure.
Yes.
When you do it every week. Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel as impactful. Mainly talking about bleeding, cursing, edgy stuff, which cool, like I'm down with. When you're telling stories and you have a guy or girl get jumped. Mm-hmm. Here's a perfect example. The perfect spot for blood, which what I thought was one of the better things AEW has produced, mm-hmm. was the Mariah May Tony Storm.
Yes,
moment.
yes.
I thought that was the perfect spot for blood.
Agreed. Yep.
I think it immediately gets watered down when you have Preston Vance on a 3-minute. Again, not bashing him. I actually really like Preston Vance.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
Just it is recency picking up on it. There's plenty of other matches where it happens in a 5 to 6 minute match, but that's where it loses the impact mm-hmm. of that moment. Again, not to compare WWE, but when The Rock made Cody bleed, it felt big mm-hmm. because you don't see blood often.
Yeah.
And AEW, where you have talent that's probably more willing to do it more often, it would work better if you just pulled it back a little bit.
Absolutely.
Your big moments would really hit home
mm-hmm.
if that's where you saved it for. Your big matches, your big moments. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be every week. It doesn't need to be every match. It should feel, I should be like, oh my God, he or she is busted open.
My jaw should be dropped. Overall, the company has too much going on. It really is a lot. I get it. WWE has a lot going on too, but between all their shows, all their belts, a mega roster, guys aren't being used. Guys are being overused. Jericho. There's a lot going on. Less is more, less titles, less blood, less cursing, all those things. Again, they mean more and hold more value when they're not said all the time. The Rock is The Rock. I get it. But him coming back and dropping the bitch word on Raw and SmackDown, that holds weight when it's the first time you heard it all year, you know? I get The Rock has a lot of freedom, but it makes a difference. Less is more. Last thing I want to mention on it is I want to bring up one of their main guys, MJF. I think he is one of those who is a great talent. Don't get me wrong, but he's one of those over the top. It's a lot. It is a lot. Not every promo has to be an FU, you're a POS, curse word this, kill your family this, whatever he said in some crazy promos, you know? Yeah. It's a little bit too much, and I get it. I'm an attitude era guy. I loved it. There's a time and a place. Bring it down a notch.
And wrap things up with my third thing. You mentioned how big the roster is. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not sitting here saying they should split the brands, because I think their best chances to split the brands was when they had Punk. They just started Collision. That would have been a perfect way to split the brands, and I think it would have actually done really well. I understand their decision not to. Ring of Honor. They've gotten better for sure with the crossover. Yeah. At one point, it was bad.
It was bad.
So I will give props. They listened. Took a little bit, but they listened. They pulled back. Less ROH champions, whatever. You have that company. Make that your NXT.
Absolutely.
Make that. You can only watch these young and up and comers on NXT, on Ring of Honor, like NXT. There are certain wrestlers who only appear on Ring of Honor, for sure. But a lot of the champions end up crossing over anyway. Right now, Dustin Rhodes, he wins the tag titles. He wins the 6-man, the trios titles. He was just on Dynamite. He was just on Rampage, whatever. Like, make it straight up exclusive and make it your developmental. That is where you can intro some younger talent that maybe is a younger signing or we might not be as familiar with. You develop them, get them a little integrated, use that as a proper, this is a completely separate brand. Who knows with the new TV deal, maybe they're on True TV or whatever it may be. Keep them completely separate. They've done a great job. I'd say that it's about 80% there. Let's chop that last 20% off.
Yeah, I definitely think using ROH as developmental would be great for them. I also don't think even doing it as a brand split would be that bad. I know you had mentioned it not really being a brand split idea of yours, but again, I'm not here to get hate, but let's be honest here. Rampage is not a successful show. They can cut Rampage entirely. You then got Dynamite and Collision. You know, the Raw and SmackDown of AEW. You have those two. You have Ring of Honor as their developmental show. It would either be that, or you also kill Collision, and then you have Dynamite and Ring of Honor as your Raw and SmackDown. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think copying the WWE model is a bad thing. It's fine. It's okay if it works. It is a lot, especially when you have all this crossover again, just by splitting the brands or making it developmental. I might not have the complaint of there being too many titles like I do, because it would already be separated. You know, I don't have a complaint that Raw has too many titles because we never see the NXT titles on Raw. Yeah, sure, maybe we've seen a little bit of like North American title involvement, but it's far and few between. It's been small. They've gotten the title off of Solo, Dominic real quick. It's been good. I think developmental, or you split the brands, is key. If you're going to go developmental, though, you almost have to go the full WWE route, and maybe you have a center, a training program, you get coaches in the company, you have a way to really establish young talent, which it's not necessarily on my list. It's something AEW has struggled with, is establishing new talent.
For sure. And if they did straight up split the brands, which like to me, perfect world, I would. And I think you introduce a new world title, whatever you want to call it, You already have the now North American or whatever
Mhm.
United States that was the
International.
international championship. That and the TNT immediately, those are essentially equals. Um, there's still like that complaint about the too many titles. If you wanted to keep the trios division, which I don't think you should, only one brand has the trios, the other brand has the tag teams. And
Mhm.
I mentioned like I think the best chance was when Punk was only on Collision, FTR was really only on Collision,
Mhm.
House of Black, like that was a perfect chance. And again, we don't live in a perfect world. Not everything is as easy as I may make it sound.
Yeah.
But I do think a brand split would do wonders because there are certain talent that I like, and if I knew I can only watch them on Wednesdays, it's more likely that I catch them. Or if I can only watch them on Saturdays or Fridays, whatever,
Mhm.
it is more likely, oh, I'm going to tune in because I can only watch this one on this day and I can only watch this one on this day. It's more likely. If you're a diehard Cody Rhodes fan and a diehard Gunther fan, you've got to tune into both shows to get them. They're
That's good.
separated. They're
Yeah.
on two different brands. So that's three from each of us. Again, constructive criticism, not just trying to because AEW being around is best for everybody. And
Mhm.
if you're a true wrestling fan, you want AEW to succeed because
Mhm.
that means the wrestling industry is doing better with them doing better.
Yeah, absolutely. There you can have favorites. You can like one company more than the other, one less wrestler more than the other. It's okay. I love wrestling, and it's as simple as that. And I want to see it all succeed. Again, we've been to AEW shows, WWE shows, independent shows. I want to watch it all. I want to love it all. 3, 4 years ago, this would have been a list of 10 things WWE needs to change, let alone three. So there's been a lot of ups and downs between every company, but I think there's room for improvement with AEW. I don't think they're quite dead in the water yet, but if things don't pick up soon, you never know.
So, what do you think? What would you change? Do you agree with anything that we've said? Do you disagree with anything that we've said? Get down in the comments below. Let us know your thoughts. Do you love AEW? Do you hate AEW? Do you think there is a foundation there that they are just about to truly crack and take things to the next level? Get down in the comments below. And before you do, throw a like on the video, subscribe, turn notifications on. Where can they catch us?
TikTok, Twitter, we're posting all the time as much as we can. We're getting a lot of love. Love to see that. Let's keep it going. Like Chris said, hit us with the like, the subscribe, follow us on all the social media. We will catch you next time.